Death Note is one of my all-time favorite animes, and in my opinion, it is one of the best animes I've ever watched. Now, the anime does have its flaws, and even then, it does a lot of things right, and I mean a lot. Now, when making this video, I thought about going a couple different directions with it, but then I thought it would be best to do a full analysis on Death Note, highlighting everything from its symbolism to its characters and even just the themes of the story. To begin, let's start with the opening, the world. For the sake of not making this video extremely long, I won't be covering the entire opening, but only the most important parts of it. If you guys want to see a full opening breakdown with me going through every scene, comment down below OP. The opening begins with Light opening his eyes with a red color instead of the typical brown. This symbolizes his early awakening into becoming Kira. Obviously, the red representing death and the newfound power he gained. Looking into his eye, you can also see they show a clock, each of the graduations symbolizing the time it takes for someone to die when their name is written to the Death Note, and also his impending fate that is yet to come. Jumping to the next scene, with him laying on the ground with Ryuk's shadow looming over him in red, foreshadowing that Light will meet his end to Ryuk, but that'll also be the final position he dies in. In the next shot, we see a depiction of Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam in the Death Note setting with Ryuk handing Light an apple. The apple is heavily used in the opening, showcasing a lot of wisdom since Light is shown as highly intelligent throughout the entire story. It also shows temptation since he got the Death Note. He felt he had to use it to fix the world, and overall capturing how he sees himself as a divine being. The next important scene is him on a beam on the top of the city with an apple that obviously represents the Death Note, as we see in the final scene. But it is to show how Light looks over everyone in the city as if he was a god himself, and the Death Note being the way of judging people. Him biting the apple is like him writing in the Death Note, as if he is giving into that first temptation. We then see the task force looking in different directions, showing how many of them couldn't seem how to figure out how to catch Kira, with Soichiro Yagami looking straight ahead at the killer was right in front of him the whole time, his own son. The scene contrasts well with the Shinigami scene of them all looking straight ahead as if they were all watching this occur. We also get a shot of Naomi Misora holding Ray Pember, alluding to another biblical representation, the Pieta. To end off talking about the opening, we see a visual of Light standing in front of a fallen angel, showing how he has become corrupted by the Death Note, with the final scene showing us the apple he bit was really the Death Note the entire time. Moving on from the opening, let's talk about the characters, starting with the man himself, Light Yagami. Before receiving the Death Note, we see Light as an intelligent yet very bored high school student who has a very radical view on the world, in the sense that it is rotten. Every day he hears the same news about the same crimes over and over again. Too many times crime happens and criminals aren't rightfully judged. Then he acquires the Death Note. Once he becomes tempted to use it for the first time, he realizes the power he now has. He starts killing, and with every kill he starts to lose a sense of his humanity, slowly feeding into his own god complex. The time where this shift becomes most prevalent is when he kills Ray Pember, the task force, and Naomi Misora. This is when he started killing for his own sake and when he truly became too far gone. Now you can argue that the shift happened when he killed Lindell Taylor out of spite, but I believe the former is when he truly was far gone as Kira. At this point in the story, we could tell he no longer kills solely because they're criminals. He now starts to do it in an attempt to avoid capture. He starts to see himself as a god. He thinks of himself as above moral constraint that govern ordinary individuals. He believes that he is a savior whose actions are not only justified, but necessary to better society. What strikes me most about his god complex is his belief in his own infallibility. He becomes convinced that he alone possesses the wisdom and judgment to determine who lives and who dies. He dismisses anyone who he thinks is against him, simply viewing it as rambling by the misguided lesser beings. He doesn't think anyone else could have done what he does, and it is only him who is capable to get as far as he did. But this arrogance and ill pursuit of power is what ultimately leads to his own demise. L. Lowlight is an enigmatic and highly skilled detective who serves as Light Yagami's primary antagonist in Death Note. Despite their opposing roles, L and Light share several similarities, such as their intellect, determination, and unorthodox methods. Both L and Light are exceptionally intelligent individuals, possessing keen analytical minds and an aptitude for strategic thinking. They approach problems with the same meticulous attention to detail and willingness to think outside the box. This intellectual prowess is what showcased their cat and mouse game throughout the series, and they continuously outmaneuver and challenge each other in a battle of wits. L's dedication to solving the Kira case is unwavering, driving him to great lengths to apprehend Kira. However, despite these similarities, L and Light are fundamentally different in their approaches to justice and morality. L adheres to a strict moral code, believes in the importance of due process and the rule of law. L, however, isn't primarily very pure with his intentions either. He loves winning, which is one of the driving factors in how he approaches the case in the series. He simply does his work because he's good at it and constantly gives him this sense of winning. So when the Kira case appears and he sees one of the hardest cases he's tried to tackle, his drive becomes simply not for justice, but his desire to win. He would go to extreme lengths if it would mean he could solve the case, whether it was setting up wiretaps throughout the Yagami household, attaching himself to Light, locking up Light and Misa, or even trying to get the task force to take on the Yotsuba group head on if he thinks they're suspicious. Both Light and L are two sides of the same coin, whose view on justice both start to become skewed for their own personal gain, are willing to go above and beyond in an attempt to beat each other. Death Note explores lots of different themes throughout the story, one of them being morality and ethics. Throughout the series, we constantly wonder what Kira is doing right or wrong. In many circumstances, we see an argument for both. On the side of what he's doing is right, as Light said himself, wars have stopped and global crime rates have dropped over 70%. As long as you're not a criminal, a world like this would sound like paradise. Now, on the other hand, you can argue killing is wrong regardless. Kira has taken innocent lives in the process. He's doing it for himself and not the world. Again, totally valid arguments, and whether you believe the end justifies the means or not is completely up to you. Justice is another huge theme in the story. While I'm not going to talk about if Light or L is the real justice, I do want to touch on two concepts that are clearly shown in the story. The first one being deterrence, or in other words, punishing others to send a message to the rest of society. Like the statistic I mentioned earlier, Light was able to drop global crime rate by 70%. It was clear many people had seen what he had done and feared the chance of instant judgment for what they had done, which almost perfectly plays into our other concept of justice. Almost. Retributive justice is basically saying an eye for an eye. Now this is why I said almost, because not every crime was committed necessarily was murder, but you can argue many of the crimes committed were some of the worst crimes imaginable that deserve the worst punishment imaginable. Again, it's not perfect, but it's something to think about. Now, since we started with talking about the opening, it feels fitting to close with talking about the ending. Illumina is one of my favorite endings as the visual is amazing. The song starts slow and starts to pick up the pace that really gets you into it, and that eerie feeling it gives you just perfectly matches the tone of the show. There are some key symbolism points I do want to cover, but I'm not going to go into every single scene, just some highlights of the ending. One scene in particular is when we see Light surrounded by doves, most likely showing him before having the death note, and he is pure and innocent. And the scene flips upside down, and those same doves turn into crows, and that red aura once again now symbolizing death and darkness once he shows he has become Kira. This symbolism is shown even further in the next scene when Light starts to throw the apple up to Ryuk, and now everything becomes red once again, showing the transition from a normal student to someone who's fallen into malevolence. Thank you to everyone who stayed till the very end. This is one of my favorite videos to make, so I hope you all enjoyed it. Again, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one.